Well, welcome. I now welcome officers from Treasury, and if you could please give your name and the capacity in which you appear today.
Philippa Brown, First Assistant Secretary, Labour Market Policy Division.
Thank you.
And Matthew Maloney, Assistant Secretary, Environment, Industry and Infrastructure Division.
Tremendous. Thanks very much, and thank you for coming at the short notice too. Firstly, did you want to make an opening statement?
No, thank you, Senator.
No, right. The reason why I called is because with the Jobkeeper, and you may have heard me say earlier on, and there's been many great stories about Jobkeeper and JobSeeker as well, and there's been other bits and pieces that I'm not blaming the officers, so I think could have been done a far lot better, but that's my view. But one thing that came out today is that we have heard that there are two major players in the armoured or cash in transit industry here in Australia, being one Armaguard, which is Linfox, and the other being Prosegur, which is a Spanish company. Now, I haven't given you notice, and if I put you on the spot, I understand you'll have to take it on notice, that's fine. But I am quizzed as to how a foreign-owned company that I'm told, and I don't have the proof, being Prosegur, Spanish-owned, rakes in hundreds of millions of income throughout Europe, but has been able to access the Jobkeeper, which for the Australian employees, good. But the Australian-owned entity, being Armaguard, couldn't because they're part of a greater corporation. Do you have any background on that for us?
Thank you, Chair. I certainly couldn't comment on the particular case that you mentioned.
Sure.
We in Treasury don't have access to information about individual companies in receipt of Jobkeeper, given it is administered by the ATO. The Jobkeeper payment is delivered at the entity level. There is a turnover test, and turnover is determined. The turnover test is determined on the size of the group, and so there are different tests that apply for very large businesses compared to smaller ones. So it may be that that one of these businesses fell into the group that required a 50% decline in turnover, and the other in the 30% decline. But I couldn't comment on the individual cases.
No, that's fair enough too. So I should be directing my questions to ATO. Or can I push them to you to push data?
So we could take that on notice and talk to the ATO about what can be provided. In general, there is some level of concern about ensuring the privacy of the individual businesses concerned and their sort of their interactions with the tax office. But we can certainly take that on notice and see what can be provided.
And I will raise that, and I'd appreciate if that could be done, because, and I've known and I've been protesting very loud and clear around, particularly in WA, but also in this building around the aviation industry, where the former Qantas employees, 5,500, now Donata, the only thing that changed was their shirt, and the pay packet came with Donata rather than Qantas on it, could not access it because they were foreign government owned, even though they're all Australian workers. So I would ask if there could be how could Prosegur get it, and yet the same rule didn't apply to them because their bigger operation is outside of Australia. Did I make myself clear enough?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah.
So we can consult with the tax office and see what can be provided. I'm genuinely unsure if anything will be able to be provided.
Oh, tremendous. And I'm sorry, I should have called the ATO. I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that. So while we're at it, I would like to see how many, and I don't need names, addresses and all that sort of stuff, but how much Jobkeeper was rolled out within the transport industry. Is that possible to find out? The road transport industry?
Yeah, well, I can certainly give you those figures. So,
that's great.
Yeah, so in the initial phase of the Jobkeeper payment that went from April to September, there are around 35,000 organisations which had an application process for Jobkeeper.
Sorry, this was April to September?
April to September, so the initial phase of Jobkeeper.
That's the first, yes.
There was about 35,000 organisations with payments around $1.2 billion.
That's in road transport alone?
That's in road transport, yes.
1.2 billion. Do we know how many employees?
That covered around 63,000 employees.
Okay.
When we move into the extension phase of Jobkeeper in the first quarter of the extension phase, so that is October to December. There were around 22,000 organisations that had an application process for Jobkeeper, with payments of around 280 million, covering about 34,000 employees.
Yep.
And then we're very early in the final phase of
So the final phase is January
to March.
to the end of March.
Yeah, and so payments have only been processed for the month of January. There are around 18,000 organisations had a payment processed. Payments around $50 million, around 26,000 employees.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very efficient. Thank you. Are they broken up into states or regions?
I don't have that level of detail with me, Senator.
Sure. No, that's fine. Is that, if it's not too much pressure, not too much pressure on you, I would love to know. I don't know if there's a city or a city, because, and I know you wouldn't do sector, but some sectors of the transport industry have ballooned. They're seeing happy days, you know, especially if they're carting toilet paper and you know, and I don't say that disparagingly, but through the retail chains where some others were really, really struggling. So
we can have a look at we can have a look at whether we can do a state and territory split.
Yeah, and rural, if there's,
Pardon?
And it's possible for regional, you know, for rural.
We'll have a look if that's possible. Sometimes when we get down to that level, the numbers get very small, and we again worry about privacy. But we'll have a look at how low we can go.
No, I fully understand, and I do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And Senator, it can be difficult sometimes where a business operates in multiple states. You know, they could be based in, say, Victoria, but operate in New South Wales, South Australia. So it can be difficult to.
The splits may not be representative. Yes.
Sure,
yeah.
and there would be a lot of that, I would assume. Yes, that's right. And I thank you for that. And I do understand you've got Senate estimates coming up soon. But we are reporting, I've got to remember, end of May? End of May. If it's not too much drama, if we could pass that on, I really would appreciate that.
Sure.
And virtually without names and factuals, I can't go into anything further. That's all I was chasing.
Excellent.
And I really appreciate it. I know, where have you come up from? Brisbane Avenue? Or?
No, just down the hill.
Okay, just down the hill. And I do appreciate that. I'm sorry I kept you waiting, but that would be very helpful to formulate part of where we go in this process. And just to your knowledge, one last thing. I know we have an aviation announcement today. Is there anything, if you do know, is there anything being looked at in the road transport sector for an ongoing keeper, whatever it might be? Program?
Certainly the government's been clear that the Jobkeeper is coming to an end.
Yep.
I'm not sure if we're in a position to comment on any further announcements.
Yeah, that's all right. I just know that there's the new one called Hospo. I heard the Hospo Keeper, and I just didn't know if there was anything on road transport, because it's, you know, down to 23,000 currently at the moment. It's still significant, isn't it?
It is, but it's I suppose a pleasing pattern to have seen the reliance reduced to the extent that it has.
Yep. No, that is very good. Ms. Brown, Mr. Maloney, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, travel safe. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that concludes today's hearing, and I do thank you, Jerry, for you and your crew, and to Hansard and Broadcasting, and the committee now stands adjourned.